G'day viewers, welcome back to the channel. This time we're going to finish building this drill vise. That's the good news. Bad news is I've still got another vise to build yet, but that's in another video. Let's get into this. So if this is your first time here, welcome to the channel. I hope I can teach you something. You like what you see and consider subscribing. Now we're left off with just about to start work on those vice jaws. So let's get into that. So the jaws on the old vice have this crisscross pattern to it. And like a bench vice would have almost like a knurled finish, a really heavy knurl. I'm going to go somewhere in between. Basically, I'm going to go 45 crisscross, which means I've got to mark out about 100 lines between the two jaws. So, let's get into that. Now here's a bonus tip. I'm going to start at the end, right at the end there. Mark that. And I want the lines about every 5mm, and I know across here is 20mm. So if I draw a line there, stay. Right. Mark a line there. Then once I move up, if I keep doing that all the way up, eventually I'm going to have lines for myself already marked. Or more to the point, I'm going to have a guide as to where to put the square so I can mark the next one. That's not quite thick enough. It's down by about 1mm. So put that on top of there for now so that I can get a good height and I can push down on it. Okay, now here comes the hard part. I have to measure every 5mm in between that, just to start off with. There's 10, there's 15. Now, as I said, put the square on there, I can mark that line, I'll mark that across the back, keep doing that. Now, I already have the next line marked. I'll just score it across the back, keep going. Going back the other way, well, you just work off these points down here. You've already got them pre-marked. That's one, and that's the easy part. I still have to do the other one and then cut all the grooves. It's going to be fun. Pretty sure this is going to be the quickest and easiest, probably not the neatest and most accurate, but it doesn't have to be neat and accurate, but I'm just going to go with this. we go. Yeah, it slipped a bit here. That doesn't matter. Absolutely doesn't matter. Like I said, doesn't need to be neat or even or very deep. It doesn't need to be deep. It just needs something so it roughs the surface up, so it's got so whatever you put in there has something to bite into. So I'll go ahead and do the other one off camera, and then we're going to countersink them. Well, as you can see, both done. Put this one aside, let that cool down a bit. It's still a bit warm. And I've set up a C-clamp here just to so it can't go anywhere. And obviously, countersink bit, not a great one, but it's a countersink bit in the chuck. Just going to go down. And this, how far do you know how to go? It's trial and error, basically. You do the first one, check where it is on the gauge, and use that as a guide from there on in. But as I said, the first one, you pretty much got to do a bit, check it, do a bit, check it. Nope. Basically, we want the flat of the head below the surface. So we've still got a bit to go. Just about there. Basically, if you can lay something across the top like that and you can still move it, it's below the surface, so that's going to be good. And I did note that it was basically in between 30 and 31 on the gauge, so I'm going to go to there, but I'm going to check each one just to double check, basically. That got a bit warm there towards the end, but they're done now. Just top side, that's the top side. Just going to bolt these back in place for now. It needs to come up just a little bit, but I can do that before I weld this on. But welding that on, that is going to be the next step. I'll tack it at the ends, like get it set everywhere, weld the ends, and then I'll take the jaws off, take everything apart, and start welding it up. Now before I weld this end on, let's just check and see if this is square. Close, but not quite. Needs a hair off just here. I'm going to go away, grind that down a bit, and I'll come back. It's still out just a tiny bit on this corner. But I think I can live with that. I think. I couldn't. Ground a bit more off. But now, it's that close to square, it doesn't matter. It's actually rubbing over here, so when it does weld, it's not going to pull in and pull out a square. So now we need to get that set to the correct height. Down just a little bit there. That end's fine. So that's something getting in the way. See how much difference this makes. Now this end's high. Now I'm happy with that. No, that is a little tiny bit high. Well, you just move this shim in a bit. The further you move it in, the higher it goes. I'm okay with that. So I'm going to clamp those two together there. It's a crunchy thread. Oh, lovely sound. Alright. It's clamped exactly where it needs to be. And then I'm going to put these long things along the length to pull it all in. Still square? I don't know. That's, yep. Alright, get the welder. I'm going to put tack either side of that. Alright, that's going to sit there and cool down for a while. It's nice and cool. Take all these clamps off now. Start with that one. And that's nice and square. Beautiful. Okay. What's next? Well, next actually is I need to put this piece in. Before I do that, I need to weld all this, then put it in. Okay, that's all welded and ground, well, as much as it's going to be anyway. So now I can put this piece in and tack that into place before we move on to the next step. Alright, that's all it needs for now, just something to hold it in place so that I can set up the next piece. Now, unfortunately, these are 5/8. I was looking for 16, but the closest I could find was 5/8. I looked at 12 and I thought, no, that's too small. So, let's get this off here and wind that on there. That's approximately where it needs to go, but I'm going to make a few marks on a couple of pieces just to make sure it's dead on. Okay, now that's the centre, but what we need to do is go out the width of the shaft, which is 16 millimeters. So we need to go out 8 millimeters either side of that. And back here on the tail, need to find the centre again and again, go out, well, yeah, about 7 millimeters either side. So now, let's set this on here. Set that to the centre, which is right there. I can't see round the back. It's getting dark. Come over a bit. Out there, you can just see the mark, and that's about it there. You know what? Now that I know how long this needs to be, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. About there. Back in a sec. Let's try that again. It was hanging way too far off the back and I just couldn't balance it. So now it's short. Right about there. Put one tack on it. Check it all over. That looks good. So I'm going to go and tack it on the other side. That is in line exactly where it needs to be. Sorry about the bright light, guys, but as you can tell, it's getting a bit dark, so I'm losing light. So that's tacked on. I'm going to have to come back to this tomorrow. Okay, next day, back inside. Now, this is the jaw off the old broken vise. And you can see, obviously, it's been bored so that this can go into the jaw. And it also has a screw that holds the base plate on. That screws in there. And the screw protrudes into that bore and holds into that lip, that cutout there, which means, well, I've got to grind this down. I've got to cut this down so that it has that groove in there. And I also have to drill a hole from underneath to hold a grub screw to lock into that. There's a couple of ways we can do that. We could put this in a drill chuck, spin it, and then just hit it with a grinder. Problem with that, it's 5/8. Most normal drill chucks only open up to about 13mm. That's 16. And I don't want to just hack at it with a grinder because it will not be even. So we're going to leave that for now. I'm going to bore this and we'll worry about that later. But at the end of the day, I'm going to need a lathe. I have a lathe, but I can't use it because it's in a storage container on the other side of town. But I do have an alternative. Anyway, we'll leave that. We'll get this off, drill some holes in this. Okay, well, I've already got that marked. So I just need to pop a centre punch mark on that and we can drill that. Alright, to drill this, I'm going to start with it's about 4mm, and I'm going to work all the way up to 1/2 inch. It's the biggest drill bit I have on hand. And I want to go in about 20mm. Right on 20mm. Okay, step 2. Done. Now I have to put one here. But before we go there, I neglected to mention earlier when I was talking about setting your depth and everything like that, you only really need to do that with the pilot, because successive big drills well then just not going to bore through further than where the pilot hole is. If you're going straight through, it doesn't matter. But if you've got a blind hole like this, the bigger drills, because they're cutting on the outside edge, they will only go as far as the pilot hole. So I didn't need to check the depth. All that do was go until I felt resistance that it wouldn't go any further. There you go. That's it. Now I got to smash a hole in there. Find centre of that hole. Mark there. And there. Find the centre of that. Which is out there. Mark across there. That looks centre to me. Alright, so where do I need this hole now? I've got a bit of 12mm rod here. I'm going to just poke that in there. And mark that. That's our full depth. Okay, now where's the other screw gone? There it is. Go from the end of that. I'm going to do a bit more than that because that's only about 5mm. I want a bit more than that. Let's check that. That's not even 5mm, it's less than 4. So mark it about 6mm from the end. Mark that 6mm wide because that's how big the screw is that's going into it. And that let's go 5mm in. 5 plus half of the size of the hole, which is 3. So we need to go 8mm on centre. So set that to 8mm. Like that. Centre punch. Let's drill that, but not with that. It looks like it's centered to me. Okay. That's the pilot. I'm now going to drill and tap that out to 6mm. Side note, if anyone who has one of these, yes, it says tap and die set, 40 piece, and yeah, it has all the common taps and the fine taps, as well as die nuts for each one of these, plus your accessories. But these sets, yeah, they'll get you by, they'll do the job, but when you're talking about professional grade or high grade even, tap and die sets, well, you can't buy the two in one. As you saw, this is a tap set. As you saw, there's 3 taps for every thread. There's a starter, an intermediate, and a finishing or bottoming tap. These sets, they're, well, at best, they're intermediates. So, as I said, yeah, they'll do the job, sort of, most of the time, maybe. But if you really want to get there, that's the way to go. This set costs twice what this set cost, and there's half the amount in it. It's a 40-piece set. This is a 29-piece set, and it's just the taps. Anyway, moving on. Well, as you saw, we've got the push sorted out. Now we've got to get the pull sorted out. This is Mick. He owns a lathe. I know that because I sold it to him.
Price was good too.
So, we're going to put this in here. Now, you never want to put threads straight into a jaw of any description, in a chuck of any description. So, I've made up a little taper piece to go over that. And that will go in and protect those threads from being damaged by the jaw. Now that we've cut the shaft down, need to mark the shaft through this hole, and hopefully this marker's going to do it. Nope. Okay. Pull that out of there. Stick that down into there. And we're marked. Well, that's all the machining done, I hope. You probably noticed I tried to cut a taper on the front of this. I'm not sure it matches taper in here. So, just going to get a tiny little smear of grease on the front there. Push that into there. See where it contacts. Now, according to that, nowhere. Try that again. Okay, well that's good, but not good. Because I think that means that the little tip on it is a bit big. So, I'm just going to hit that on the linisher just to clean it up just a bit. And keep trying it. And see if I can get some sort of mark in there. Alright, just took a little bit off. Let's try that. Basically, what should happen is that should transfer into there and tell me where it's touching. It's still not, which means that's really steep compared to that. And I don't know if I want to cut that down anymore because that'll make that too thin. The other alternative is to regrind the drill bit. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do, because if we look at the taper on that compared to that, that's a big taper. So I'm going to regrind this and then re-drill that, see if it makes a difference. Which I'm thinking it should, because that's a lot closer. It's still not great, but it's a lot closer. Well, I didn't think that through. That's cool. But now what it means, because yes, I've drilled it out, it looks like there's a little bit of contact there, but not a lot, because that's now deeper, but the shoulder hasn't moved, so it's not going in any further. And that shoulder isn't going anywhere because, well, that's got to stay there, which means a good thing, I won't be pushing on this point up here. Get you in view. I won't be pushing on this point up here. I'll be pushing back here with these two washers, in case you were wondering what they are for. They're going to work basically as a thrust plate, a thrust washer. So any force is going to be on those washers. I can now put that in there. The other way I could do it is to find a piece of metal, round metal, that size, put them in there and punch the center of it. Actually, you know what? I think I might do that. ended up putting 3 layers in there, as you saw. But I'm still going to put these 2 on the back. So let's load that on there. Again, just a smear on these. You don't need to grease the outside because, well, it doesn't contact anything, but I am going to grease all that up. Now that can slide on there. I can turn it over. We have a tiny little grub screw, set screw, whatever you want to call it. A little bit of Loctite up the top of that. There we go. That into there. And I just wiped off all the Loctite. Awesome. So I'll put some more on it. Nope. Oh great, it's 3mm. The one my son lost. Yep, here we go, that one. Alright, just going to stand it up. Ah! Knew you'd do that. It's alright. Loctite on there. That back in there. Stay. The grease is sticking to it. That'll do it. Then back on there. That back on there. Compress all that up and run that down. Oh bugger, it's just a tad too long. I have to shave a little bit off that. Back in a sec. Here's yet another tip. Whenever you have to cut the end of a bolt, whether it be on a grinder, wood hacks or whatever, put a nut on it first. That way, when you're done, you take the nut off and the threads are nice and clean to go into whatever you're putting it into. Right, let's put some Loctite back on that, put it back in the hole. Alright, that's just below the hole. Beautiful. Okay, now let's put the rest of this jaw back together. Oh, that's bound up. And about 20 minutes of fiddling and messing around, just restacking all of this, making sure everything's in the right alignment so that it does that. Pulled up nice and square. There's no tension on that because, well, I've got no handle. Now the old one had this short handle on it, which was pretty good. You could get a lot of leverage off that. Having said that, this is not original, because originally it just had the one in the centre, and I put a bit too much force on it, and it broke. So I had to remanufacture that. I don't know whether I want to do that, or just weld a nut on the end of it. Pop that on there. weld it, obviously cut that down, weld it, but then I have to do it up with a spanner. I have a spanner that fits it, and I'm actually heading that direction. It's going to be a lot easier than making up something like this. And, well, the bench vise that I'm going to make is going to be the same sort of situation. It's just going to have a nut welded on the end of the threaded rod. So, I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, next piece I'm going to tackle is the foot, or the base plate. Now, here I've got two pieces of 50 by 6, 250 long. Why 250 long? One piece is going to sit about there, the other piece is going to sit on the other side, and then this piece is going to sit across the back. That's going to give me full support across the back and down each side. Once I have those three in place, I might later put a filler piece down the front, but it doesn't need it. And I mean, it's only going to have that much purchase anyway. These are actually going to give it more support than just that. So the first thing I need to do, come on, clamp that about there, clamp that there. I'm going to tack those two together. Alright, now I'm going to turn that round, do that again, up there. measuring all four corners from here down to here. Overall, there's a difference of about 0.5 millimetre. There, that sits flat, doesn't quite scratch. That does. That tells me this is contacting down here. But unfortunately, up here, I set that to that. I'll do that again so you can see. Set that, push that down, settle it. Alright. This one's a tiny little bit higher. It's about 1 millimetre. And that's about the same. So the front did pull, unfortunately, down a tiny little bit. So I might just have to break those tacks, put a little tiny thin spacer piece like we did underneath the moving jaw, tack it back together. Did turn out too well. Don't know what happened to the can, but it decided to self-destruct after the first coat. Wow. So it looks like it's got a base coat of copper, but it looks like it's gone gold. After a coat of gold, now we take tape off. Finished. Finally. Well, that took way longer than I thought it would. Yeah, you think it's a long time for you? Hour and a half? Yeah, try 2 months for me. Anyway, it's done now. Now I can move on to the next one. As for why I paid it, well, copper and then gold, well, because I had it, it's been sitting around for years. I'm never going to use it for anything else, so why not? Now, why did I coat part of it with oil and not paint it? Well, because it needs to be able to move, and with no paint on it, well, it's going to rust. So, coat it with oil. I'll give that a couple of days and then just wipe the excess off, and it'll never rust, and it'll always slide. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. Hope you like what you saw. If you did, hit that like button down below. And way down there, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when the next one's coming. And I'll see you on the next one.